the Nintendo Switch 2 is about to get more expensive. So if you've been holding off buying one or you already own one and you're wondering what on earth is going on with the gaming industry right now, well, this is everything that you need to know. This isn't just a Nintendo story, this is a story about every console on the market, about the global economy, about AI, weirdly enough, and whether the era of affordable gaming is coming to an end. So, we got the facts. Nintendo has officially confirmed that from the 1st of September 2026, the price of the Nintendo Switch 2 in the US is going to rise from $449 to $499. That is a $50 increase. In Europe, the price goes up by €30 to €499, and in Canada, it's jumping $50 to $679. And then in Japan, where Nintendo is based, the price already went up in late May, climbing 10,000 yen to 59,980. So Nintendo did not slip this news out quietly. They did issue what could be generally described as a public apology alongside the announcement, saying they sincerely regret the impact on customers and deeply appreciate our understanding, which is a very Nintendo way of saying, we know this one stings, and we are very sorry. When Nintendo's president Shuntaro Furukawa was pressed on this during the company's financial results presentation, he admitted something pretty interesting. The new higher price still won't actually cover all the costs of making the Switch 2. In his own words, he said, while we wanted to prioritize a wider adoption, it was challenging to bear the rising costs over a long period. The new pricing does not fully account for all of the cost increases. So just bear that in mind. Nintendo is raising the price, taking a PR hit, and still sending the consoles out to a loss. It tells you everything about the pressure on the company right now. Good thing they've got loads of money in the bank. Well, to understand the price rise, you need to understand what is driving those prices. It just comes down to three things hitting Nintendo simultaneously. First, we've got the memory chip. So the global demand for DRAM and other semiconductor components has exploded, largely because AI companies are hoovering up supply at a pace the industry has never seen before. Reports suggest that a deal between Samsung and SK will see the two tech giants supply OpenAI with nearly half of the entire world's DRAM output. That leaves everyone else, including console manufacturers, fighting over what is left at significantly higher prices. Nintendo estimates the combined impact of memory costs and tariffs is going to cost them around 100 billion yen this financial year alone. That is roughly $640 million. Second of all, we've got US trade tariffs. The ongoing tariff environment on imported electronics has added substantial costs to hardware that's manufactured and shipped from Asia. Nintendo has even filed a legal motion with the US Court of International Trade to recover the tariff it paid, describing the situation as causing imminent and irreparable harm to its business. That isn't really the language of a company that is comfortable with this situation. Third, we've got exchange rates. So the yen remains weak against the dollar and the euro. Nintendo's costs in real terms have risen, even as production costs have remained flat. So it's a perfect storm, and Nintendo's president has described these pressures as medium to long term, meaning this is not a short-term blip. This is the new normal. The price rise announcement didn't exactly calm the markets. Nintendo's share price fell 7% when the markets opened in Japan following the news after 5 consecutive months of declines and growing investor anxiety. The wider financial picture from Nintendo's latest results is also pretty sobering. The company is projecting revenue of 2.05 trillion yen for the current financial year, over 11% below last year's and well short of analysts' expectations. Net profit is also forecast to fall by 27%, and Switch 2 hardware sales are predicted to drop from nearly 20 million units in the last financial year to around 16.5 million this year. So that is quite interesting. The last one is particularly unusual. It's almost unheard of for a successful console to sell fewer units in its second year than its first. As one industry analyst put it, Nintendo is predicting Switch 2 sales to decline when they'd normally be rising. A big part of investor nervousness isn't just the price rise itself, it's the software pipeline. Right now, you've got no confirmed 3D Mario, no Animal Crossing, no Legend of Zelda title on the 2026 release roadmap, even though we've got a heavily rumoured Ocarina of Time remake. Nintendo has hinted it has games under wraps for later in the year, but without a must-have title to justify the hardware investment, the price hike becomes a much harder sell to customers and investors alike. So, what is Nintendo actually going to do about it? Well, their answer for now is the Choose Your Own Game bundle. Starting next month, Nintendo's going to offer the Switch 2 bundled with a digital game for $500, available at selected retailers for a limited time while the supplies last. Buyers can choose from 3 titles: Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bananza, or Pokémon Pokopia. Mario Kart World retails for $80 on its own, so at $500, the bundle effectively gives you a game worth $80 for free, while the standalone console costs $449.99. So that is a genuine saving of around $30 now. And once September hits, the console alone rises to $499.99 or $500. Buying the console and the game separately would set you back around $580. So the bundle represents roughly $80 in value versus that post-September scenario. It is worth noting that this isn't the first time Nintendo has tried this approach. They previously bundled the Switch 2 with Mario Kart World at launch, before that offer expired ahead of last Christmas, so there is a clear pattern. Nintendo is using bundles to enhance the value perception during periods of commercial pressure. The catch, as ever, is availability. Nintendo has stressed that the bundle is limited while supplies last, and with the September deadline looming, it is reasonable to expect demand to spike sharply in the summer months. In fact, PlayStation saw something very similar. Well, here's part of the story that tends to get lost when people focus on Nintendo specifically. Switch 2 price rise isn't an anomaly across the industry. Every major console platform has raised prices over the past year, driven by the same underlying pressures. PlayStation is perhaps the starkest example of where things are headed. Sony raised the PS5 prices globally in April 2026, with the standard PS5 now sitting at $650 in the US, up from $500 at launch, and that was priced in 2020. The digital edition is $600, and the PlayStation 5 Pro has climbed up to $900. Oh my goodness. Sony cited continued pressures for the global economic landscape for the changes, language that's going to sound very similar and familiar to what Nintendo has been saying. Those price rises are having a real impact. PS5 sales fell 46% year on year in the most recent quarter. Microsoft and Xbox have arguably had the most turbulent pricing story of all. The company raised Xbox console prices twice in 2025. The first increase came in May when Xbox Series X jumped $100 to $600. Then in October, the prices went up again. The Series X settled at $650, and the Series S 1TB at $449 or $450. Now, across both hikes, the base Xbox Series X went from $500 at the start of 2025 to $650 by the autumn. The top end 2TB Galaxy Black model went from $599 to $799 in under a year. That is a 30% increase on the most expensive Xbox model in less than 12 months. So to put things into perspective, here's where things stand on launch price versus today. The Nintendo Switch 2 launched at $450 and rises to $500 in September. That is a $50 increase. The PlayStation 5 launched at $500 and now costs $650, and that is up $150. The PS5 Pro launched at $700 and is now $900. That is up by $200. And the Xbox Series X launched at $500 and now costs $650, also up $150. And the Xbox Series S launched at $300 and is now $450, again a $150 price rise. Seen in that context, Nintendo's $50 increase is actually the most modest of the 3 platform holders by a considerable margin. It doesn't make it painless, of course, but it does reframe the conversation. This isn't Nintendo making a decision in isolation. This is the entire gaming hardware industry moving in the same direction at the same time for the same reasons. Now, what we're seeing right now represents a genuine structural shift in how gaming hardware is priced. For decades, the pattern was pretty predictable. Consoles launched at a premium and got cheaper as manufacturing costs fell and competition intensified. The original Switch launched at $300 in 2017 and was eventually selling for $200 in its final year. That is how it is supposed to work. That model now looks increasingly outdated. The PS5 is more expensive today than what it was when it launched 6 years ago. The Xbox Series X is $150 more expensive than when it launched, and the Switch 2 is headed in the exact same direction, with Nintendo's president explicitly describing the cost pressures as long-term rather than temporary. The driving forces here, so AI's insatiable demand for memory chips, trade tensions, currency pressures, all these things aren't going away. And with the next generation of consoles still a few years away, there is a very real possibility that hardware prices continue to climb before they ever come down. Some analysts have already floated the idea the next generation consoles could approach $1,000 at launch. For consumers, that raises serious questions about the value proposition of console gaming altogether. When a PS5 Pro costs $900 and a top-end Xbox pushes $800, the traditional argument that consoles offer an affordable, straightforward gaming experience starts to feel increasingly strained. PC gaming, cloud gaming, handheld alternatives may all benefit from this squeeze. Well, if you're on the fence about a Switch 2, the maths are pretty clear heading into the summer. The Choose Your Game bundle gives you the console and a flagship title worth $80 on its own for $500 today. From September the 1st, the console alone is going to cost that much. The bundle runs until supplies last, and with the summer buying surge likely, those supplies may not last as long as Nintendo suggests. Nintendo's also confirmed that unannounced games are coming later in 2026. If the company is sitting on a major reveal like a new Mario, a new Zelda, or anything in that tier, the software picture could change dramatically in the second half of the year. Well, the short version is, if you want a Switch 2 and the bundle is available, this is probably the best value you're going to see for some time. If you're waiting for the price to drop, the evidence across the entire industry suggests that might be a very long wait. The era of consoles getting cheaper over time may well be behind us, and the Switch 2 price rise is just the latest and most visible sign of that change. Well, let me know in the comments what you think. I would love to hear about it, but that is it for this video today. So if you enjoyed this video or found it useful, hit that subscribe button down below for even more Nintendo content here on Power Up Direct. Well, thanks again. I shall see you real soon.